You're watching Taste the Victory.
Hey guys, welcome back to another tier list. One of the most exciting parts of a new set. Today we got EX3 Draconic Roar. So these are extra sets which are smaller and don't shake up the meta too much. However, it seems like this one introduced a lot of new decks. So let's go ahead and see how they actually compare and stack up to the current meta dominating decks. Let's start off right away with Crossheart, because Crossheart is one of the decks that is unfortunately going to take a very hard hit from the ban list. Like, this is getting rid of one of your main combo enders and finishers. So Crossboard going to 1, and then Sunrise Buster also going to 1, gets rid of some of your most efficient removal, which really does hurt it a lot. However, the main core mechanics of Cross and the actual pieces that make up the Cross requirements are really good and really efficient. X5 is still coming out for free with Spotabon, which you would just up to 4 now with the free space that you get. It's overall still a really strong core. It's a good deck. It just lost a lot of its explosive potential. So I don't think this goes down immediately horribly to the tier 3 or anything like that. I think its core is still way too good to be considered that, but I will put this at the very dead last bottom of tier 2 for now. You still have stuff like Crimson Blaze and other stuff like that that's going to help you out the top decks of X3, which would be like Bloomlord and stuff like that, but it's a matter of being able to close out games now, which becomes a problem for it. After that, we have Examon. This is the first on this list of new decks introduced in X3. Examon is really cool. It seems like a deck that was designed really to hard counter the BT9 decks because they were so dominant before X3 came out. Because what Examon does with the other cards in its deck, like Slayer Dramon, it forces your opponent to attack when you pull them out of raising, and then you force a block with your giant, huge Examon blocker and stuff like that to force them to like swing and then delete themselves into your block. So it's really cool because a lot of those BT9 decks do just like to hide in the raising area until they're able to come out in OTK. So that's kind of an answer to them. You're also able to dodge deletion a lot of times, be able to be aggressive with your DNA Digivolution stuff and swing into security. Unfortunately, being a level 7 DNA Digivolution, there is a lot of consistency issues. There's a lot of stuff that needs to go right and that you need to see all your pieces for Examon. So that itself kind of holds it back. Also, we have Metal Garurumon as one of the absolute best decks to come out of BT9, still being a monster in X3. And Examon really does struggle into Metal Garurumon because Metal Garurumon has that Garurumon X protection that gives them battle protection. So your main strategy of like forcing them out of raising into your block doesn't work as well against Metal Garurumon. And then you also have no way to protect against their bounce removal, which is one of the most efficient ways to answer Examon. So between consistency issues and some of the best decks in the format just naturally having tools to deal with it, I think Examon is a 1.5 tier deck. Then we have Dark Nightmon. So Dark Nightmon is another Digi-Crossing deck that kind of keeps respawning itself on the board. It keeps floating and then getting security attack +1 off of that old Dark Nightmon from BT7. It's really not too consistent. It has a lot of consistency issues, probably worse than Examon, for only a kind of mild payoff. So honestly, while it's not terrible, I'm going to put this at the top of tier 3 for now, and it's not a bad deck by any means, so it's staying at the top of it. Then we have D-Brigade. So D-Brigade does get new support in the set. However, because of the nature of D-Brigade, its rookies are really efficient and really good at cycling and being able to keep momentum, hand size, and all that stuff up. So you really just play like a Rookie Rush / security control package with D-Brigade. Because of that, I don't think you actually end up using a lot of its new high-end stuff introduced in the set, especially since it doesn't have any kind of on-play cheat out like the old Dark Dramon did. It's more like climb and reduce when Digivolving. I think all you would take from the new set is the new Command Dramon and the new Seal Dramon, and then maybe a Tank Dramon to sit on just to activate the Seal Dramon inheritable for stuff that gets played off of the old Command Dramon when it's deleted. However, it's still a fantastic deck. It's powerful, it's fast. The new cards introduced are really great. Like, you do love that Seal Dramon that can also now reboot itself with jamming. If you put like a Toy Agumon on this list, you love the new Command Dramon, which provides decoy, which is nice to have. Overall, it's really great. I just think the best decks in the format are going to have ways to answer its playstyle. So we're going to put this at the top of tier 2. I really want to be generous and put this towards somewhere of the bottom of 1.5. However, I think it'll really depend on how our meta shapes up, and we're going to see it could go anywhere between 1.5 to 2 to the top of tier 2. After that, we have another new deck introduced in X3, and that is Hina, or Lynx as some people call it, since Hina and the Digimon in this deck are from the Digimon mobile game Lynx. It was really cool as far as mobile games go, a little bit grindy, but anyways, we have Lynx here. It is like a black and red dragon playstyle, and you're supposed to hard slam to get on-play effects, but because of the Hina Tamer, you could just tap and activate any of these Digimon's on-play effects when they Digivolve instead, which makes them a lot more efficient and really powerful. It's really cool, it's awesome. However, it does hinge on seeing this one tamer, and there is ways to be able to get it and to search for it and stuff like that. But I think it's just one of those decks where everything needs to go right and you really want to be drawing well and stuff like that. So while it has powerful payoff, it is a little bit slow for the top decks of this format. Overall, you do have some really good niches. Like the Black Dragon has an ability to turn off your opponent's Digivolving when they are unsuspended, I believe it is. So that is a really good niche there that helps it buy time and stuff like that. But overall, I think the best decks in the format are able to play around you. So I think this is a really good contender for top of tier 2. Maybe 1.5 if our meta shapes up in its favor. Then we have Metal Garurumon X. So this is a deck from BT9. It has been really fantastic. We haven't seen a lot of results from it from Japan and Malaysia and Singapore and all those areas because the promos from the magazine are banned. Because in Japan, these were distributed in V-Jump in the very beginning of the game as promos, I believe, the Garurumon and Where Garurumon. So some regions straight up banned it since they don't have access to it, so we don't see a lot of results from it. But here we see in North America, it's taking up a lot of topping slots, and for good reason. This deck is insane. You're able to just ignore your opponent and do your own stuff in the raising area, and then when you come out, you have bounce removal to get rid of any rookies that are rushing you, or a big body if it's the only thing on field with the Metal Garurumon X on suspend. It is so consistently able to OTK in one turn. You have protection to enable the OTK. You have blue memory boost, hammer sparks, a lot of stuff to fall back on in case you are not able to close out in that same turn without a little bit extra memory. Good consistency because you have so many searchers, and those searchers also up your hand size to activate the Where Garurumon promo inheritable. This deck does everything and so efficiently. It is the best deck in the entire format in my opinion. Then we have Armor Rush. So we saw Armor Rush took a top at the DC1 here in North America with the Jesmon GX tech option, which is really cool because it works Digivolving off of Magnamon X. You can put another Magnamon underneath it to unsuspend and attack again, and then you also get a bunch of security attack effects off of it. It's basically a better fire rocket with a body. The low end of armors is always just really efficient because you're kind of just mini Rookie Rush that is also able to evolve to keep up with your hand size, which is something classic traditional Rookie Rush struggles with otherwise. So this is fast, it has outs like Magnamon X and Jesmon GX to a lot of good stuff in the format. It has a bit of consistency issues, and we've only seen that one top for it in North America and not much else, not even within the top 32. So I think this is a solid tier 2 deck, and we'll see if we're able to adapt it to be into 1.5 eventually. Then we have Ancient Greymon. So this is Red Hybrids OTK. It's one of those evergreen decks. I've talked about this a lot, where it just ignores its opponents and builds itself in the raising. If you draw well, and you're very likely to win. And if not, your face blows up, you know. So it's an evergreen deck. I think it's always going to be somewhat good. I'm going to put it towards the bottom with tier 2. Then we have Bloomlord. So Bloomlord gets a new Hydramon support in X3. That is amazing because that is what this deck wanted. It wanted a really good payoff that's a little bit more efficient and gives it more grind game and removal than just Bloomlord, because Bloomlord is just the OTK. You need ways to also respond to your opponent. Hydramon is amazing. Bottom decking something is such powerful removal in this game, especially in this format, and then be able to self-sustain itself is really great for this deck. So it gives it a payoff that it really needed before. It's able to go wide and makes it so hard for opponents to answer unless they have something like Dexmon, because even Crimson Blaze in some situations may not be an answer, depending on how lucky you get with your level 5s and drawing into your download guys and stuff like that, because then they won't be like the DP threshold. So I think this is very closely tied with Metal Garurumon as best deck in the format, but I think I would give the edge slightly to Metal Garurumon. Then we have the new Imperial Dramon. This one is crazy because it is red and purple introduced in X3. It's a really cool combo that lets you just like quickly go all the way up to your level 6 and start trashing one security, I think, and then do a bunch of security attack +1 checks. It's amazing and it's efficient, and it feels so cool when it goes off because you get all the dopamine from your crazy combo. It's a really fun deck. However, it's like Hina and a lot of these other decks introduced in X3, where I feel like everything just needs to go right and you need to be able to see your pieces very well. You have good ways to dig through your deck in purple. You know, you have Icebond and all that stuff like that. However, cards like that do rely on being able to swing into your opponent's security, hoping it gets deleted, or drawing your options and seeing them, the ones that delete your own Digimon for an effect. So I think it's a solid deck. However, I do think it's going to struggle a lot into the format. But when it goes off, it is really powerful. I think there's an argument to make this 1.5 if you're able to build it well into the format. However, for now, I think it's going to be somewhere towards the middle of tier 2, because I think out of all these decks, it really struggles the most with getting its combo consistently off. Then we have Minerva Loop. Man, does this deck fall off. I don't think you really hurt too much by the calling to one hit in the newest ban list, but it wouldn't be a bad option to be able to run 2 of them if you could, you know, so that does suck for the deck. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. One of your best matchups, Crossheart, is now gone. You had a really good niche of countering it because it plays immediately into Minervamon's opponent's turn effect. And everything else just kind of speeds up a lot. With Metal Garurumon being the best deck in the format, you kind of just struggle into keeping pace. So I think it's probably like a really good tier 3 deck that could be potentially the bottom of tier 2. But I do take into consideration what I predict to see in terms of tournament results and, you know, in terms of representation. And this deck like takes time to learn and pilot, and people just aren't going to want to do that. Or you could do something as simple as Metal Garurumon X or Armor Rush or something like that. So I really don't think we're going to see much representation for this deck outside of specialists at all. So I'm just going to be a little harsh on it and put it at the top of tier 3. Then we have Gallantmon. Gallantmon does get new support in the set, a really interesting red-purple splash into it. It's really cool. It really synergizes well with the old X antibody stuff as well. It helps fill up your trash, which is great for the old Gallantmon stuff, which some of them relied on trash count, like Crimson Mode, and the old BT1, BT2, I think, Gallantmon it was. The really old one from all the way from back in the beginning of the game. It's really great. It's fantastic. It lets you control board better. It lets you set up your win con a bit more better. It gives you more cycling and efficiency now. It's fantastic, and I think it's really a lot of what Gallantmon needed and pushes it all the way up to 1.5 in my opinion. And this deck is only going to continue to get more support in the future, as we've seen with boosted set 12 leaks, so I think it's a great investment for this format. Next, we got Aigastramon. So this is tragic. If you guys have seen my Shivamon video on how it's an indirect victim of the ban list, I think it's a lot like this for Aigastramon. And if you haven't, I really do think that's one of my favorite videos I've ever made, so I really appreciate if you guys check that out if that sounds interesting to you. But basically, in Japan, Shivamon had a really good niche of countering blue hybrids very well, and to a slightly lesser extent, yellow hybrids as well. But because of the ban list, those decks did not end up seeing as much play for a bit. And even though they came back into relevance later, for that time, Shivamon lost its niche and just had nowhere to go and did not have a place in our English format. And then it adapted to a playstyle in English that did not benefit Shivamon at all. So even though blue hybrids came back into dominance, it wasn't in a way that Shivamon could answer it. So it lost a lot of its benefit, and that's what's happening with Aigastramon. Because of its effects, it had a good niche of countering Crossheart, but unfortunately the ban list took it out. And while Crossheart is still a really good playable deck, it's not going to see the representation that Aigastramon wanted to be able to counter it. So before, at best, I think this was a tier 2 deck somewhere in the middle. But now it has like no real niche. Maybe if Blue Flare's still around, it could help somewhat like that, but I mean, it's just going to stun all the stuff that you're playing out anyway, so this is just a tier 3 deck now. After that, we got Grandis Kuwagamon. This is a great deck. People have traditionally not been happy with where I tier this deck, but I think now lists are really starting to get optimized, and it's starting to be a format where Grandis plays well into, because like you just build your own stack and you just swing into security and clear their stuff, and then you also have the added benefit of being able to suspend and beat over their stuff while piercing. So Grandis is a really fantastic deck. I think this is the top of tier 1.5. I just do think the top decks are able to play into it well enough that Grandis can't compete. However, I do think there is a great argument you can make to put it up there, because like it's one of those decks where you just ignore your opponent and you just go for game in one turn. It's amazing. It's like, what can you do other than pray your security is really good. And Grandis is a deck that cares a little bit less than its inheritables outside of the level 5s, so you're able to just like go. As soon as you see the pieces, you just start digivolving up, digiburst it all away because you don't care about them, unless they give you like some digiburst effect like Weedmon. So it's really great in doing what it wants to do. I just think the top decks really outpace it, so we're going to put it at the very top of 1.5. However, if you guys are upset at this, I think it should be tier 1. I totally understand that. Let's see how it turns out into the meta. But then also like stuff like Examon, you know, it's able to answer it pretty well. While I think Grandis is a little bit consistent, so I'm gonna put it above Examon. It does go pretty decently even into it, so you know, even if the 1.5 decks are countering it, I'm gonna have to put it in 1.5. Then we have 4 Great Dragons. This is a really interesting archetype because it's kind of like Megazoo with direct support. It's really cool with the option, but however, it's insanely piece reliant. Those pieces are expensive. The payoff isn't too crazy, so Great Dragons is just going to be a tier 3 deck in my opinion. However, I will put it above Aegis. Then we got Blue Flare. So this deck is insane. With Crossheart getting hit, this is one of the premier Digicross decks, and it's really good, it's really efficient, it's hard hitting. You can tech to even be more hard hitting with the Greymon starter deck. And then you get a new option card in the set that makes your playstyle really efficient and really easy to stun your opponent's board. So I do think this is a contender for tier 1. And as well with all the other decks in the format, it's able to answer them pretty well. I think a little bit more better than some of the decks at 1.5, so I'm going to put this at the top of tier 1. Then we got Alphamon. So unfortunately, we do finally have the ban list coming to North America. Doru Greymon is going to 1. So this deck is just not going to be the monster it once was. It is still really great package, but you really want that Doru Greymon to be able to get the Dex Doru Greymon for 1 Digivolution with Cool Boy and its effect and all that good stuff. And then also to get Security Attack +1, multiple of it stacking is really important to this deck being able to OTK. So man, I don't know. This deck is really suffering. We're gonna have to put it like somewhere towards the bottom of tier 2. I think it's probably able to do a little bit more than Cross, but I think Cross is just more efficient package. It doesn't need to climb as much because it's a lot slower now too without Doru Grey. So I think it's better than stuff in tier 3 at the very least, so I'll put it at the bottom of tier 2. There's a good core still there. It's just not as good as Crossheart's core, and it's a lot harder for it to close out game now. So surprisingly, we have new support for Machinedramon in this set. I think it's literally just 2 cards, but it's pretty good. I think it might finally push this deck to tier 2, like somewhere towards like the middle of it. It helps you make your effects live again. However, the main gameplay of Machinedramon is just so awkward and so easy for decks to counter, and you're giving them so much memory. So I don't know. It'll have to be somewhere here in tier 2 or like towards the top of tier 3. Somewhere around here is where we're gonna have to go with it, but I do think like there is some merit now with Crossheart gone that this could maybe potentially be a tier 2 deck. Then we got Black War Greymon / Gaiomon X. This is a solid deck. I think it's always going to be like top of tier 2 for now until BT 11, where it's going to get insane support with the new Black War Greymon X stuff. It's a solid game plan. It has good answers in certain decks. However, it needs to see a lot of pieces, and this just isn't a format where its main gimmick of destroying Tamers is one that's going to help it a lot. It hard counters the heck out of Hina Lynx, but that's about it. I think next format is going to be the best deck in format, but for now, this is a solid tier 2 deck because I think the top decks outside of Gallantmon don't care too much about you blowing up their Tamers, and they're not going to have too many out for you anyways, outside of Blue Flare, which would be devastated by it, but I don't think it'll be enough for it to compete like at a crazy level. After that, we got War Greymon X. I think this is a solid tier 2 deck. It's basically just another BT9 deck, except it's the one with a lot of pieces and not as much as a crazy payoff. Then we got Venusmon. So this is kind of just some like security control representation. So with Crossheart gone and Melga basically being the best deck in the format, security control is probably going to go back into prominence and be pretty good. It's a strategy that's just always going to have legs, you know, it's just always going to be working and efficient because it's just so tilting to your opponent, which will make them misplay. It's also just kind of difficult to play around because if you get blown up by one thing in security, there's something else coming out of hand. There is ways to play around it, but Venusmon specifically is such a fantastic counter to the top decks of the format, and that one turn you lose from them is devastating and enough for security control to come back. So I think this is going to be a solid tier 1.5 deck no matter what. Then we got Jessamon. Jessamon is really cool. I think Bloomlord becomes at such a powerful state that it's not really able to keep up as well into it. It's a really good deck in the BT 10 format, and the support is still amazing. It's still there. When you get it all right, it feels impossible to answer the board, so I think it's probably going to be like towards the bottom of 1.5, because it is still strong, but I think a lot of decks have like sped up now and have efficient answers to it in stuff like Bloomlord. And then Blue Flare becoming even better and more representative will make it really hard for Jessamon GX to be able to get anywhere if you see it a lot at locals and regionals. Then we have Mastamon. Really great deck. Another deck that needs to see a lot of its pieces, however, but its payoff is a lot better than some of those other decks, in my opinion, that need that payoff. So I think this is a good tier 2 deck. It takes a specialist to be able to take it to tournament and do well. It's got great stuff that you can tech in, and it's going to be pretty efficient. Overall, I think this is the middle of tier 2, and a really good, efficient pilot that is a Mastamon fanatic will be able to take this to the top of regionals easily. Also, let's put D-Brigade a bit above Hina, because I think it's way more consistent than that. I probably just forgot to move it when I put Hina into the list. Then we got Old Classic Imperial Dramon. So this is the old one. It's an OTK deck. It's similar in the vein to BT9 decks, where like it just wants to do its own thing, and because of that and how efficient it is at doing that at OTKing, it's always going to be somewhat relevant. It has good removal, a little bit better than most of the BT9 decks, because blue is a color that just doesn't have good removal, while Megadeth is a really strong removal card, so it's great that it has access to that. Overall, I think it's really solid. It'll continue to do its own thing. However, it is just a tier 2 deck, so I'm going to put this somewhere towards the middle. A really good pilot will be able to take you well, but it's just not always going to perform consistently for you. Then we got Bielstarmon. Unfortunately, this is a tier 3 deck. I put it somewhere towards the top of it. It's good. It has tools to be able to adapt to a meta. It's just really slow, really expensive playstyle, and you have to rely on your security so much, arguably more than security control, I think, ironically, because like you need your trash to be filling up and be able to answer your board while you're doing that. So overall, I think it's in an awkward spot in this format. And then we got D-Reaper. This is a deck that has certainly fallen off, unfortunately. It's cool, it's cute, it's strong, it has a good niche. I just think everything is way too fast and officially has now outpaced it. So it's just a simple tier 3 deck, but I do think you could take this to locals and get some good wins with it, because people might forget and underestimate it. It has tools, it's just not a good format for it. And that will be our X3 tier list. So we're going to stay with this format for a while, since there's going to be a bit of time until BT11 comes out, but I think this is going to be a really fun format. The decks that this set introduces are really fun, and I think they're going to be really cool to take to locals, and there's some pretty good support for old decks that make it really strong, and the way that the format ends up shaping up makes a lot of old decks pretty good as well. Like Melga becomes even better suited to best deck in format, in my opinion. You got Galamon doing really good, you have Grandis becoming even better, in my opinion, and that's really cool to see. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if you guys disagree with this tier list or are happy with it in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, remember to stay hungry until you get a taste of victory.